Hey friends, just a note before we get started, two things. One, I wanted to let you know that my book, Lessons from a Terrible Photographer, is available now on Amazon and everywhere else, wherever you buy books online. It's available worldwide in a hardcover, paperback, and ebook. The audiobook is on its way, I promise. And if you're listening June 2026 or beyond, it really should be available now, hopefully. Other things to note, if you purchase the collector's box this past December, you should be getting an email pretty soon with a bunch of good stuff, including the ebook, a couple extra chapters, and some other content. And once the audiobook comes out, you'll get that too. Number two, this is, kind of unfortunate. I'm working through some teeth issues right now, and I'm in kind of a lot of pain. It kind of sucks. So if I sound a little weird this episode, that's probably why. My wife told me to take a week off. Never. We're just going to power through this episode together. Okay, so that's all from me. Let's get into it. Okay, so the house smells like money pretending to be nature. It smells like crushed rosemary and damp cedar, that botanical, high-end pharmacy scent, but really though, it just smells like money. The smell was layered over this metallic hum of a professional HVAC system. And underneath that, the ozone from my strobe packs, the scorched sugar smell of an espresso machine that nobody's really using, and that chemical floral of a makeup artist's hairspray. This is a house where no one ever uses the main kitchen, you know? The oven is too clean. It's more for show. Where the design wasn't made for comfort, but for style. The light doesn't need much help, you know? There's floor-to-ceiling windows which pull in the Pacific's bright glow bouncing off the water, flooding the interior with something white and clinical and just sort of cruel. The limestone floors hold long rectangular blocks of it. The dust stirred up by assistants hauling C-stands across the room turns gold in it, temporarily architectural. And there are people in this room whose t-shirts cost well over $200. There's a sofa that feels like a very expensive cloud that has been told to keep its feelings to itself. And there's a founder standing near the kitchen island, watching his product get photographed exactly the way he always imagined it would be. He's having the best day of his professional life. And I'm just counting down to a Diet Dr. Pepper from McDonald's, a stupid ritual I have after every shoot. And it's not because the work was bad. The work was good. It was technically precise. It was efficiently and professionally executed, delivered exactly what the brief and the client asked for. But somewhere between the setup and lunch, I stopped feeling anything except performance of feeling something, you know? The mask that goes on with the equipment. The version of me that knows how to keep the energy up in the room, keep the talent loose, keep the client feeling like everything's good. Why does that keep happening? It's not on the bad jobs, but on the good ones. Well, my name is Patrick Fuller, and this is The Terrible Creative, where we have honest conversations about creativity, identity, and what it costs to keep showing up. This is episode 63, and I'm calling it The Cost of Getting Good. If this is your first episode, start anywhere, really. It's in no particular order, even though sometimes it's not. My email is open. The link is in the show notes, along with some other good stuff. I respond to everything, so feel free to reach out. So, with that said, let's get into it. So I've left a lot of rooms. And by rooms, I mean jobs. My first job was at a newspaper in Dubuque, Iowa. It was design work, page layouts, local business ads, the unglamorous and unsexy infrastructure of a regional paper. $7.50 an hour. And I was trying to use negative space the way that Volkswagen used it. My boss would tell me to make things bigger. I would point to print ads and say they didn't need to fill the page. I explained my philosophy of negative space. She didn't like that. But I was good at this. Good enough that the publisher of the paper noticed. Good enough that I ended up designing for the VPs instead of the team that I was on. Let's just say I wasn't very popular. And I had no choice in becoming one of them. I had my own agenda. And from my employer's perspective, that agenda was actually a benefit. They got better work than what they expected, than what they hired me for. Because I cared more than I should have. More than the $7.50 an hour warranted. Then the ceiling appeared. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to learn. Just maintenance. And then, honestly, restlessness, boredom, sloppiness, bitterness, and then the door. Director, art director, Taylor Guitars. Overseeing photography for a global brand, learning what it means to make images at a level that actually costs something. And then I pieced out. The exits from all my jobs blur together from this distance, but the pattern doesn't. It was 2013 in Houston, Texas, a city that if you've ever been there in August feels less like a metropolitan hub and more like being trapped inside a giant, warm, damp sock. I had recently talked my way into a job as a senior level designer. And when I say talked my way in, I mean I had performed a series of linguistic acrobats that convinced a group of strangers I was the man who understood the secret of stage lighting, of scenic construction, but in reality, I was a man with a portfolio that looked like a very convincing lie and enough confidence to bridge the gap between, I think I can build that, and, oh God, I've actually built it. And for a while, it was great. It was wonderful, you know. It was the kind of work where everyone never asked questions, and it was the kind of work where people even gave me a lot of compliments. And then something strange happened. The world started to notice. I got invited to speak at a conference in Dallas. It was a breakout session, which is the conference world's way of saying, you're the opening act. But I was honored. I felt like a real person with a real career. I was being taken seriously. So I went to tell my boss. Now, you have to understand this man's office. It was a room designed by someone who had seen a picture of creativity in a magazine and decided to recreate it on a questionable budget. There was this giant glass wall meant for his, quote, genius ideas. Though at the time, it mostly featured a few meeting dates and some grocery list style notes. It's real visionary shit, you know? And he sat in this orange chair, the kind of chair that looks like it belongs in a design museum, but cheaper, you know? All rounded edges, orange color. It was the sort of thing that photographs beautifully. But when you sit in it, it feels like being cradled by a very angry transformer. And across from him sat these two turquoise leather seats facing his desk. On the floor was black shag carpet. And the whole room was like a mood board for a man who needed you to know that he was creative before you noticed anything else. And I sat down in his office in this white director's chair, which was leaning against the wall. You know, the kind that suggests you're about to say action. But in this case, I was about to say, hey, boss, I've been invited to speak in Dallas. He didn't look at me. He just looked at this giant glass wall. Curiously, there wasn't any congratulations. Not even wow, that's nice, Patrick. Instead, I got a lecture on divided focus. My role, according to him, was there to serve the brand and not build my own name. He spoke with this like hushed, urgent tone of a man protecting a kingdom that was actually just a black shag carpet and a blank glass wall. And I sat there being poked by the director's chair, and it hit me. He wasn't my boss in that moment. He was just more like a jealous girlfriend, you know? So I walked back to my desk. And something inside the senior level designer just sort of clicked off. The mask was still on, but the person behind it had already checked out of Houston. You know, I didn't quit that day. I lasted another 6 months before a job in Washington came up, and I definitely took it. But I wouldn't have even looked at that job. Wouldn't even considered it. Wouldn't even taken the call if he had walked out of that office and said, hey man, good job. You're representing this team well. Go do it. And if he would have said that, I would have stayed. I was making him look good. And from my perspective, I had talked my way into this organization and delivered more than what the job description asked for. The conference that I was invited to speak in Dallas was evidence of that, which he couldn't see. And when he couldn't see that, I stopped being able to see myself there. You know, I've had a lot of these type of moments in my career where the ceiling doesn't always announce itself, you know. And I used to tell this story as ambition, you know, as a way of chasing something bigger. And that version, I think, is true, but it's incomplete. I've been thinking about this for the past couple of weeks. You know, I'm really good at my job. I really am. But I think I'm just a terrible employee. You know, there's this concept in organizational psychology that describes what happens to high performers over time. Early success in a specific skill creates a feedback loop. You get good, you know. The world confirms you belong there, and the confirmation makes you better. And the better you get, the more the world needs you exactly where you are. Robert Berglas, a psychologist who studied high performers, noticed this pattern. People who reach a certain level in their field often start to work against themselves. When the world confirms you belong in this specific box, the box begins to feel like a coffin or a cage. Self-handicapping becomes the only exit that feels available. So back in 1853, Herman Melville wrote this short story called Bartleby, the Scrivener. And Bartleby is basically the 19th century version of a guy who's just really good at his job. He's a copyist in a law office on Wall Street. And his whole life is just copying. He's meticulous. He's reliable. He's exactly the kind of person you want on your team. But then one day, his boss asks him to do this totally routine thing. Just some proofreading. Nothing big, just outside of his normal responsibilities. And Bartleby looks at him and says, "I would prefer not to." And the weird thing is, he doesn't just leave, you know? He doesn't go find another job. He just stays there in the office. But he's done. He just stops. And I think what Melville is getting at here is the thing that makes the story so deeply uncomfortable is that Bartleby didn't have a self to go back to. Had been a copyist for so long that it actually become the copy itself. And the tragedy isn't the refusal, it's that when he finally stopped the performance, he realized there was no one left behind the mask. So here's what this looks like when you're a freelancer like us. You're not just good at your craft. You're dependable. You show up. You deliver clean files on time without drama. You manage the set. You manage the room. You manage the client. You manage the energy. You manage your own day-to-day operations. And that combination, skill plus reliability, has a market dollar value attached to it. Clients budget for it. They schedule around it. And I think what I'm describing is less of a career, but more like a lease, you know? And the rent, in this case, is your attention. You keep signing this lease because you're good at what you do. You're good at the work, but also because you've forgotten how to be anything else. You're standing in rooms where everyone knows exactly what you're capable of. And that confirmation, that is addictive. The alternative requires imagining yourself as someone the market hasn't confirmed yet. And after years of confirmation, that's a genuinely terrifying place to stand. You know, that client that I talked about in the opening, the client in Carlsbad, the client who had his best professional day, his product, the thing that he poured everything into, was finally being shown in a way that he'd always envisioned it, you know? And I think that he had the right to be stoked. I was right to give him everything that I had that day. But when I got home, when I drove home and I made the 40-minute drive from Carlsbad to my home, and I walked in the door and my keys were still in my hand. Before I had the chance to take my shoes off, my phone pinged. It was the client asking when he could see the proofs, telling me how much that he enjoyed the day. I think we've all had moments like this. And I think there's a specific kind of loneliness that only happens when you're being applauded for a version of yourself that you've already outgrown. You know, I put the phone face down on my couch. I didn't respond. Because I think there's a professional success that looks, from the outside, like everything is working. You're busy, you're capable, you're in demand. And from the inside, it feels like wearing a costume that you just can't take off sometimes. It's like doing a matinee and an evening performance of the same show on the same day. Waiting for the moment you can finally stop being good at it long enough to remember, to even question, to think about if you still like it. I've called this podcast, the show, from the beginning, The Terrible Photographer. Now it's The Terrible Creative. And I've given a version of the story behind the name before. I've talked about how The Terrible Photographer is really sort of a anti-guru thing, the refusal to perform expertise thing, the middle finger to the industry's obsession with just looking polished and having your shit together and all that other bullshit. And first of all, I just want to say that all that is true. I definitely want to say that. But I had a conversation this week with another photographer, and he told me gently, but with the kind of honesty that sort of leaves a mark, that I need to talk better about myself, about the work, that maybe the self-deprecation was a wall. And listen, the bastard was right. I will admit he was right. And I will say I do throw myself and my work under the bus more than I should. And I'm sure it gets annoying. Maybe you've been annoyed on this podcast. It's like a shtick that's past its expiration date. But really, though, it's just like a deep embedded way of survival for me. In that moment, or really any moment like that, I tend to validate and then I redirect. That's my approach too. I say things like, yeah, totally. You're probably totally right about that. Oh, by the way, how's your kid doing? I'll ask. It's like kind of like a ninja move, avoiding the blows of these sort of honest confrontations about my shitty self-worth. Because look, and I feel like I've said this before on this podcast. If I call my work terrible before you do, I win. I've occupied the high ground of my own failure. It's a preemptive strike against a rejection I've been expecting since I was young enough to care what people thought about the things that I made. If I get there first, you can't hurt me with it. And the word terrible in the title of the show isn't just a brand choice. If I'm being honest, that's what we're supposed to be on this podcast. It's also a bunker, It's a room that you're not allowed to reach. And if you can indulge me for just a minute, I want to talk about one of my favorite authors, T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot wrote about a man so aware of how he might be perceived that he never acts at all. He never tries anything, never does anything. He asks the question, do I dare disturb the universe? The answer is always no. The ability of the man is there. The hunger of the man is there. Being seen and found wanting is more than he can carry, though. So he gets there first. Every time. He measures out his life with coffee spoons and calls it living. So I think we do this as well. You know, creatives who've been in the game long enough to get good, but not long enough to stop being afraid. We've built entire identities around our mediocrity, not because we believe in it, but because believing in it is cheaper than being wrong about our own potential in public. And the competence trap isn't just getting stuck in something that you're good at. It's, I got good. I built walls around the good thing to protect the thing I was good at. And now the walls are what everybody else sees. And the work that we do is somewhere inside. The walls are the brand. The brand is to protect us. I don't really have a happy ending for you today. There's no like tidy resolution where the music swells and I walk off into the sunset finally healed. I will still lead with self-deprecation. That's just what I do, you know? I will still hide in the bunker of my own mediocrity because it's a hell of a lot safer than standing out there in the light feeling exposed by the harsh conditions of you all. Even now, on the sets that I love, you know, on the personal shoots, with the clients who actually respect me, I still can feel the mask sliding into place before I've even put the goddamn car in park. And for a long time, I told myself this show, Terrible, was just a brand choice. A clever little bit of anti-marketing. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That was a goddamn lie. I called it terrible because it's more of an insurance policy. If I tell you the work is hot garbage, before you have a chance to see it, I've already won. I've occupied the gutter so you can't kick me out on the curb. And this is not humility. I've learned from my therapist, it's risk management. It's a preemptive strike against a rejection that I've been dreading since I was 16. And that's the real tragedy of getting good. You build these elaborate high-gloss walls to protect the creative spirit, and you wake up one day and realize the walls are the only thing people are paying for. You aren't an artist anymore. You're just a high-functioning ghost haunting your own goddamn career. The creatives I actually give a damn about, the ones who haven't been hollowed out by the machine, are the ones willing to be absolute, pathetic amateurs at something new. They would rather be bleeding in the dirt of a fresh failure than sitting on the throne of good enough. And the competence trap is the lease that you choose to sign every morning. You put on the uniform, you show up for the matinee, and you give them exactly what they paid for, and you keep the change. But you know the difference. You know the difference between the actual smell of a fire, real fire, and the clinical synthetic stage effect of a fire. You felt the engine finally catch, you know, the deep and visceral hum of the momentum, just as clearly as you felt the hollow, pathetic whirring of a career that's just spinning its wheels in the dirt. The mask is in your bag right now. You know exactly what it's made of. You know exactly how much this mask weighs. The question isn't whether you're good enough to do the work. We all know that you're good enough to do the work. You know that you're good enough to do the work. You've already proven you can deliver the brief. You can make the client happy. You will do what it takes to get the job done and done well. But the question is whether you can live with the guy staring back at you in the rearview mirror on the way home. So until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.